Welcome, welcome, Dave. I hope my internet's coming through and you can hear me because things are new.
They are. It's Wednesday, and you're not in Atlanta, as I understand it.
Yeah, I'm in Puerto Rico, is the way they say it here. I call it Puerto Rico, but that doesn't come across so nice.
Well, good. How's your trip been? Enjoying the
It,
time there?
yeah, it's been great. It's been in the 80s, which has been great because it's a lot colder where I was. But it's been great, great weather. It's been fun to connect with our group over here. I mean, you spent years and years over in this location.
I did. Yeah, I was talking to one of my friends this morning, saying how I was supposed to go this week as well, and with family stuff, decided not to. But it wouldn't be. It would be nice to get back and be able to see people again.
Yeah, well, it's different too because the last time I was here was after Hurricane Maria, and now I'm after Fiona, and so you always get to see the effects of everything that happens. I mean, nothing was like Maria that I've ever seen, and I'm sure for you, it was a difference of life and everything. And here they talk about the power and the water and so many things that they see. And I'd love to just take a moment to ask, what your experience was like when you were here during all of that.
Yeah, it was something I hope I never live through again. Although something that we definitely learned from and got ourselves through. And usually through our trials, life can get better, and we can have better experiences in the future because what we learned. But it was a tough time. I mean, it was fun, fun to see the island come together. Meaning, when something like that happens, all of a sudden you get to know your friends and neighbors and others much better than you did before because now you're all sitting out on your front porches and the kids are out in the streets riding bikes and doing other things. But it's sad that we have to go through something like that to build those relationships.
And Dave, how is that tied to retirement? If we look at all the things you had to do to be prepared or to get through something like that, because retirement doesn't just come and hit us in the face. Well, maybe it does, but do you have any correlations between those two?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when we look at our retirement, the problem most people have is they wait too long to solve the issues. So all of a sudden they get into retirement, and then the market drops 30%, and they panic. It's going, wait a second, what I thought was enough money to get me through now isn't enough money. Yet, how do I go back to work after I've been unemployed for 10 years and maybe don't even have the licenses or the skills that I would need to be able to go back and make the money that I once was? Same thing with the hurricane. If you're prepared, you really don't have to worry about it. Not that it can't create havoc and it can't cause problems for you, but it can be a much easier experience if you've looked at what the consequences and the risk could be, and then tried to mitigate those risks as you go through the process.
So, Dave, as you're preparing for a hurricane, I'm sure there's things you were probably trying to get the fuel and water, and I guess toilet paper is a cool thing now. But if you're trying to get all these, what would you relate that to if we were talking retirement? If I said, okay, Dave, we have retirement coming, what are some of the things I would kind of get to be prepared as I'm looking towards that?
Yeah, it's really coming down to a plan, CR, when you look at it. I mean, if you all the things you talked about, if you're trying to get ready, there's checklists out there that we use to get ready for a hurricane. Many of them were provided by our church, others provided by community, saying these are things that you should have if you're going to get through this process. For anything from a 72-hour kit to water tablets and drink bottles that will filter the water and all kinds of other things that we end up having available. Retirement's the same way. There's all these risks and all these problems that we know are going to happen to a segment of the population. So it's saying, how do we prepare? Let's put a plan in place that will address these risks using the tools that will help us get through them if they happen in our retirement.
And Dave, I didn't mean to make a whole Puerto Rico segment, but being here, I think often about that. And again, I just still can see trees, and I can see places that were destroyed, even from Fiona. I mean, I'm sure things go way back to Maria, but it's just interesting when you're here on the ground and you kind of go back to the things that you experienced. And I didn't mean to tie it all, but it felt very appropriate.
Yeah, it's been 5 years now since Maria, and my favorite place on the island, as you know, many of our listeners may not, but was El Yunque, the rainforest there. Love hiking up there. Took my family there many times. Many people said that it would be 20 years before it would get back to where it was. Now, I have not been back since. Everything's really come back, so it's been probably 3 years since I was back up there. But would be interested to see if it's going to take that long. Things do grow fairly quickly there. That was just an absolutely beautiful place that got decimated through the hurricane.
Well, Dave, as we continue to talk, as we're getting everyone through retirement and just trying to give advice, what we do here is we just want to make sure we answer your questions. So for those that are here live and joining us, please go ahead and submit your retirement questions, and we'll do our best to get those inserted with all the rest of our questions. And if you don't have time today, or maybe you're just listening and you want to do that later, you can always go to retirementriskadvisors.com/questions, and that's where you can submit those questions. Now, Dave, all of these questions do come from social media, from our website, from webinars, through just meeting people that are asking you a million questions because everybody wants to see if you have the secret pill. And before we dive into the questions, Dave, what's the secret? Is there a secret to just making sure we're set for retirement?
Yeah, the secret is taking action on the things you learn. Many of us learn information that can help us in our retirement, but then we never do anything with it. We get 5 years into the process and something happens and goes, oh yeah, I remember that time. I wish I would have done things differently. I knew what to do. I just didn't do it. And it happens to all of us. It's very easy to procrastinate retirement or many other things that we're going to do on a daily basis. And it's just making sure we're taking action, getting things put in place, not waiting till tomorrow to do something that we could truly do today if we take the time.
Well, Dave, hopefully the internet holds up and hopefully the power holds up while we go through this today. So again, if I blip out, I apologize, but hopefully my video will stay clear. And again, if you're watching live and if you want to get your question, go ahead and get that in the comments, either on Facebook or YouTube Live. All right, Dave, let's jump in because I've got my first question from Lou, and this is a great one. Why does the government have required minimum distributions on retirement accounts?
The main reason is most of these accounts are structured with tax benefits attached to them, which also means at some point there needs to be tax consequences because the government's using this money that would come off of these accounts to operate their budgets off of on an annual basis. So what they're trying to prevent is people putting money into a deferred account and then just carrying it for decades with no responsibility to take any money out. Becomes a really bad tax situation for the government. And so they're trying to make sure they manage their budgets. They look at what amount of money could come in from these accounts based upon these RMDs, and then use that in trying to determine fiscal policy for current years and the future.
Dave, I also read that the RMDs are kind of a safeguard against people who are using these as kind of a retirement account to avoid paying taxes.
And absolutely. And that's, again, why they're trying to solve it is they don't want all that just being built up and then people paying it off later where maybe they don't even have the money at that point. I mean, you may have situations where because of market loss or other things that people may do, that there's just no money really left at that point to tax.
And Dave, I know they changed the age for the withdrawal. I think it was back in 2020. It went from 70 and a half to 72. Why are they changing this age?
Personally, there's probably two reasons. One of them they would give you is life expectancy is going up. And so we're waiting longer, although you're not seeing changes yet to Social Security that would impact that. But my belief is it has a whole lot to do with lobbying. A lot of people out there are trying to push that have money to extend that age so wealthier Americans can have more deferred. Because it's not the poor people. You need to understand, anyone that's listening to this, 40% of America has to take RMDs to live off of. So, that's the poor segment of society that's saying, I've got to have money to live. My Social Security is not cutting it. I need something else to be able to offset that. So to me, it really becomes just a lobbyist game to extend that out. But there could be some justification that it's dealing with longevity. But if that's the case, let's start seeing changes to Social Security and Medicare as well.
And Dave, can you withdraw more?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can pull out as much as you want. The required minimum distribution, that's the base amount you have to take, or you're going to have excise tax on any amounts that you did not pull out of there. But yeah, you can take as much as you want. Now, should you? Probably not. When we look at what a appropriate withdrawal rate is, we look at these RMDs, many times they're actually higher than what people should be spending on an annual basis if they want to ensure their money's going to last throughout their retirement.
So Dave, the last question I want to ask in regards to this is, what if we have multiple accounts out there? how do we handle all of these different accounts?
Yeah, so what you've got to do is make sure you're totaling everything up and then pulling your distribution out. It's not account by account specific, so it's not like you've got to pull money from each of them individually, but as a whole, you need to make sure you're getting the total amount pulled out that you should. So many people, my recommendation is to consolidate. We don't need to have a lot of excess calculations, a lot of excess problems in retirement. Try to consolidate those all in, simplify your retirement, make it easier to do these calculations, and more than anything, to make sure you don't mess up. Last thing you want to do is mess up, maybe miss an account, not pull enough money out, and then end up with some additional tax and penalty you didn't want to pay.
And Dave, as you talk about messing up, one of the questions I saved here from Rosalie was, is there a way to better my withdrawal strategy?
Absolutely. And it's through a risk based plan, Rosalie. It's really putting together and mapping out what accounts your money should come from. This is something many people don't understand either. You can extend your retirement assets out substantially by just ordering the liquidation out of the various accounts that you have. Many people think, well, I got $1 million set aside and I've got 200,000 in my checking account and I've got 800,000 in my retirement account. Well, it doesn't matter which account I pull from. It's all my money and I'm going to get it. Well, because of tax rates and investment products that you may have this money invested in, makes a huge difference long term, but it's pretty hard for you and I to calculate that with our brains. We use software to be able to calculate this out and map it out to say, hey, there is a much better strategy. Let's identify risk reduction so we can get a higher withdrawal amount. And then let's figure out which accounts we need to pull the money from each year so we can extend those assets out longer.
Dave, I love that you talk about getting a plan, because really what we're trying to do is help you establish a strategy for those withdrawals, because that's really designed to provide the income that's going to fund our retirement. But people aren't looking at always that in that same direction.
Yeah, we for some reason just think there's this one path out there to retirement. For most people, it's the traditional retirement accounts, those IRAs, 401ks, 403bs. Not saying they've been a bad strategy. It's just the world's changing, but we think that's the way it is. And if we follow that pattern, we're all going to get the same result. And some level, I guess you are, but there's better processes. And your retirement should be very individualized. There's no reason to be using a shelf-based retirement plan. We want to look individually at, what are your two goals? The biggest goals we've got to look at: what do we want our money to do while we're alive? What do we want our money to do while we're dead? That's going to be a different answer for all of us based upon our experiences up to that point, our family structure, our health concerns that we may have. All these things are going to impact those answers, but those are the answers we need to answer for ourselves and have a plan put together to solve.
Dave, that's the thing I really get frustrated with when we talk about retirement, is so many people will come up to me and say, well, you're in the retirement space, so what are you doing? Or what can I do that's similar to what you're doing? And I really like what you said, is because it has to be individualized. Because again, I get a lot of people that just say, whatever you're doing, I want to do that. Or whatever somebody else is doing, I want to do the same. And I think that, like you said, there's different paths, there's different ways. But how do we help people change that mindset that just say, whatever anyone else is doing, I just want to start there because it'll get me on the path, which I appreciate, but there has to be something more.
Well, it's interesting, CR. A couple of thoughts come to mind as you talk about this. One is just that we also get that from other advisors. You bring up what we do, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what I do too. Well, no, it isn't. I can promise you, I saw what the other advisors do, and what we do is not exactly what you're doing. But for the consumer, it's understanding that there is a better process. That again, all advisors are not created equal. All plans are not created equal. You've got a whole slew of risk. And if the advisor's not addressing and talking to you about those and creating a solution for that plan, you're going to have some problems in the future. So it's really getting ourselves to a point that we can understand that there is a better option for us, and then putting in the work to figure it out.
That's very well said. Well, Dave, I've got the next question. We get this one all the time. This is from Austin. Will working after I retire do more harm than good?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and goes back to even a conversation I was having yesterday with a client. Oftentimes we look at situations where they like this that could create more tax, maybe create a reduction of benefits that you're getting, maybe create a situation where you'd be paying more for Medicare. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can happen, but for almost every situation, CR, you get 100% when you work. and then you don't lose 100% in these various consequences. There are a few out there, I guess, especially if you're lower income, getting food stamps, various payments from the government. There are situations where, hey, every dollar earned could potentially cost you more than that. But in a retirement scenario, what we're finding is the reductions don't equal the benefits. Saying, yeah, okay, we got $1 and maybe, yeah, it's going to cost us 50 cents of that to pay in taxes or lost benefits or other things that happen, but we're still getting something out of it. So if you've got the time, you've got the desire to work, it can be a good thing. Now, understand too, there's always a cost benefit. And maybe a good example is to use, we work with a lot of doctors, especially from an accounting side. Many of these doctors obviously make hundreds of thousands of dollars. And now all of a sudden wife saying, hey, I want to go work, or a husband that doesn't have that license making $40,000 or $50,000 a year. Well, if they've got children and taxes and all these things, and they're going to pay for daycare now, well, yeah, maybe they're making $2 an hour. Usually they're still making something. They're just making less per hour than really what they want to make. So they say $2 is not worth it to me. But Austin, in most situations, it helps to work. And especially when half of us are running out of money. Again, it's something that the more money we can get, the more money we can set aside, the longer we can work, the better it is for most of us.
Dave, I look at this too. I wish I had the statistic on this, but a lot of people left work during the pandemic and they just said, I'm retiring. But now with the recession on the way, you've got high inflation. Many people are coming back to work, and I guess you'd call it unretiring, but they're coming back to work. And I just want to know what this means for those that, are you giving up any Social Security benefits when you do things like this at all?
Well, it depends. At age 63, I mean, if someone were saying, hey, I'm retiring early, I'm going to take Social Security benefits early, yes. There's income thresholds that if you make more than is there, you're going to have those benefits delayed. But again, I'm not sure that I say it's a bad thing, because you keep that money. It's not like you're losing it. It just gets delayed till future. So we've really got to look at this. And I will tell you, CR, we're coming into a really bad situation. We talk about this in our webinars. We talk about the 68% worrying that they're going to run out of money, the 50% that will. That number is going to go up, folks. And I can't imagine. Can you imagine, CR, that your whole retirement is based on what the stock market does? I mean, this is where people screw up their retirement. It's like, okay, why don't you have a plan that deals with the risk, and especially sequence of return, so you can go retire when you want to retire? I'm getting it all the time from people now that are calling saying, hey, I thought I was going to retire at 70, but with this market, I may be 74, 75, because they didn't have a plan in place. Those that have it are like, yeah, you know what, the market's down, but I got other places I can get money from right now. I put everything in place to where I get income, not assets, in retirement. You bet. I'm going at 65 or 70 and not going to look back. I'm very happy about where things are. So,
Dave, the thing I love about this is it feels like all we do is talk about putting a plan together, working on a plan. But it seems that every situation we come up against, if we would have planned this, it would have been better. Just like going back to the hurricane, if those people who rode out the hurricane and did nothing versus those like you and your family, you planned way ahead. You guys had all of the things you needed. You weren't standing in lines for hours. You weren't going to the gas station for hours because you had the things necessary to do that. And it's so hard because, like, as you said at the beginning, we just need to take action, because if we're hearing this, but we're not doing anything, we're not any better off.
No, we're not. And you're right. Our lives get planned so often. Again, how are you successful at work? You plan your day. You try to limit your email activity or whatever else, or social media or other things people do during their work life. Mm-hmm. But we've got to plan those days out. And it's same with retirement. We're talking about such a long period of time that can be an enjoyable time. In fact, talking to some of the people we do podcasts with, what we find is your happiness level actually starts going back up at about 50, 70 and 80. You could be much happier, even though physically you may not be able to do what you used to do. You can be much happier than you were in your 20s and 30s. But yet, if we haven't planned, and if we've got financial stress and we've not done these things, and CR, the other thing is, it's not like we have to do a master's degree course in this and spend 20 hours a week for 2 years to figure it out. It does not take that much time. I mean, even in our own planning, when we meet with people, it's like, okay, it's going to take 2 months. but that's a once a week meeting, maybe once every other week. So we're talking 4 to 6 meetings to be able to make this happen, and 6 hours of your life to be able to map out and get some good guidance to help you get through the next 20, 30, 40 years. Not a very big investment compared to other things in our lives that we have to invest our time into.
Dave, it's funny you bring that up as we talk about testing and all of those. I've had a chance to talk with the different staff and different employees as I'm here in Puerto Rico, but some of them I've talked about as you went through getting your CPA license and going through and sitting for the exam. And they talk about how intense it is and how grueling it is and how much you have to go through. And I said, how much did you prepare? They said, one of the employees said, I took a whole year off and I had to go through and I sat down just because I wanted to really prepare. Could you imagine if we had to have people in retirement say, hey, you got to cram for this. You got to take a year off and then really get into the rhythm of this. And then you can start to get into your retirement. So to me, I look at this and I feel like it's an easy way, even though we look at all these other things out there.
You're right. And we can't use the standard process that we often use to get ourselves where we need to be. Failure is a great motivator for most people. I know for me, you go back to the CPA exam, I bombed that thing the first time. I didn't pass anything. Now, back in my day, we had to take it all at one time, where now they get divided up into 4 sections. But I'll tell you, I was motivated after that. I realized, look, this was a miserable experience. I don't want to live this again. I'm going to study my butt off until I get this figured out. And I went in and passed the whole exam in the next setting. I didn't condition or do anything of that nature. I finished it. Well, in retirement, we don't have the freedom to do that. You can't say, look, I'm going to fail at 80 and then somehow get myself back on my feet so I can succeed by 90. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's just too late. We can't do that with that part of our lives, as we've done with many other things that have really helped us to get motivated to do the right thing long term.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, Dave, Elliot's here. I love having Elliot come on. He always has so many cool places he's going. And it looks like he's coming to Puerto Rico in December.
You'll have to stop in and hook up with our office there, Ellie, if you got time. We're about 3 minutes outside of downtown there. You couldn't walk there, unfortunately, but you definitely be connectable. So, yeah, hopefully you enjoy the island. Maybe you've got some good activities planned. Just a great place to be.
And I'm just going to give you one place, Dave, that I came to. Obviously, I love ice cream, so I went to Anita's. It's a gelato place here. Dave, I have never been happier walking into a place like that and having like 50 different types of gelato all in one place. You should have saw the smile on my face.
Yeah, well, it should be a fun trip. I wish we could all go on a cruise here soon.
Yeah. All right, Dave. Well, you kind of talked a little bit about, as we're talking about longevity, and that spurred this next question I want to pull up here as I'm skipping around a little bit. But Nora's asking, is recommending long-term care insurance to a client at age 35 too early?
Absolutely not, as long as you make sure you keep one thing in mind, and that is, do not make them pay from 35 to 95. Unfortunately, there were policies that were sold out there before, and most of them have gone away, luckily, but there's still a few out there where you pay indefinitely. Well, that's horrible. If you're starting at age 35, yeah, it may seem affordable, but it's very problematic, because by the time you get in your 80s and need it, you're going to not be able to afford it. So no, I think this is approximately, I'm trying to go back. I probably bought mine around 30. I think if I look back on the time frame of when I got mine, maybe as late as 35, but I paid it all up front. It was 100% paid in advance. Now, if you do that, you've also got to look at the availability of COLA increases and those type of things. Mine's not designed that way, so I put other tools in place to solve it. But my basic policy would have been purchased back then, but it's now paid in full and something I don't have to worry about with a good insurance company that has been around for decades, if not 100 years plus, that I don't expect to go out of business by the time I get there.
Yeah. So Dave, what's the average nursing home stay, if we're going to be realistic?
2.2 years for a male, 3.7 years for a female. 20% of people will be there longer than 5 years. So, yeah, and a pretty long time.
And who's going to go? So if it takes you, me, and let's say Bill over here, who's going to the nursing home?
Yeah, one of us. I hope it's you or Bill, but no offense. But the reality of it, it's one of three people that's going to happen to. So again, you can't even imagine if you were to go up to someone and say, "Hey, what do you think the chances of you becoming disabled during your working years are?" I've got to assume that would be less than 5% of people that say, "I'm really that worried about it," even though many of us buy disability insurance in case, but a small fraction of the population does that. And yet we get into retirement with a guaranteed 35% chance that we'll end up with going into a long-term disability situation, and we're doing nothing at all to prepare for it.
Now, Dave, we talk about preparing a lot for the financial part. And this is one thing you talk about that I think a lot of other people in this financial space do not talk about. But what about the mental stress for those that maybe are without adequate means to pay for this care?
Yeah, I spent most of my childhood in a home where financial stress and the mental impact of that, the emotions of it, created huge problems for my family, long term and short term. And this is something we can't overlook. We need to get ourselves into a position where we're just not worrying so much. Now, yes, throughout most of our working lives, we worry about a whole slew of things that never happen. In fact, it's always interesting to me. It takes me time, and that, to get back to projects at times. And 80% of them seem to solve themselves before I ever get time to be able to get to them. Things often just work out. But when we look at this on the other end, we've just got to make sure we're getting prepared for it, and that we've got something in place so that if things happen, we just don't have to sit there and stew and worry day after day of what our lives are going to be like.
Dave, I really like that. And I know we're getting short on time. So I'm going to see if I can pull up at least one more question here because I want to get through at least one or two more. But this one's coming from Maya. I'm going to always slaughter these names here, Dave. But they're asking, can we take our annuity payment as a consistent monthly payment for life?
Absolutely, you can, and that's really the goal of an annuity, is to provide you guaranteed lifetime income. Now, all of that being said, a couple of things I would give to you as tips when we look at there. One, the older you are, the higher amount of money you can take out of it. So again, probably not going to want to get started too early, just so you get the maximum benefit that's available there. And then number two, I would look at products that are inflation adjusted. There are many products out there that you can get an inflation adjusted payment out of, but this is what we're really trying to get to. And if you love Social Security, this is what amazes me. And I realize the problem is there's just a lot of bad annuities that people sell out there. But if you love Social Security, you should absolutely love an annuity. And again, if you get the right one, you will, because it's going to perform like your Social Security and help solve those same problems.
Dave, the one thing I really like about this is because, like you said, it's we're looking at the best option to turn some of your savings into guaranteed income.
Yeah, and we can't have enough of it. Again, you talk about taking worry out of your retirement, and some like even right now, yeah, if you're in your working years, and again, you're still getting your check every month, and your retirement's in the toilet. Yeah, you're worried about the future, but you're sure not worried about today. And the future only worry is hey, when I retire in 20 years and this check ends, now you got to worry about it. Well, if you're in retirement and that check never ends, I mean, imagine being in a position that what your living costs are. Even if inflation goes up, that you're going to be able to go with it with your Social Security and hopefully with your annuity, but at least close enough to maintain a similar lifestyle. Not a whole lot of things I got to worry about. If I've still got a little pocket of money for shock and aspirational expenses, I'm pretty good to know that I can get those bills paid every month, month after month, year after year, decade after decade throughout my retirement.
And Dave, I just wanted to add one thing. I was talking to one of my friends, and we were talking about retirement, and the only thing he said to me is, "CR, all you're trying to do is insure for longevity. You're just trying to make sure that's all you're doing." And I wanted to get your feedback because I thought it was very interesting the way he approached that.
Yeah, obviously it's the biggest problem. It's a risk multiplier. I mean, longevity becomes the biggest issue we deal with in retirement, but it's really not all we're trying to solve, because everyone's not going to have longevity. We want to ensure that whether you do or not, that you're able to have the best retirement possible. Now, yes, in the end, I do think that majority of what we're trying to do is to ensure that you don't outlive your money. That's obviously what the biggest issue we're trying to solve. But it's more than that. It's giving you comfort through those years and giving you peace of mind through those years, no matter how long you live.
And Dave, that's very similar to what I said. And that's the thing is there's much more to it. There's much more to unpack instead of just making sure we're checking off one thing on the box. Because to me, that's like saying we're going to go, get ready for the hurricane. We're only going to look at just the things other people told us you need. Don't ever think about if you have 4 or 5 kids. Just look at the things that one family gave you a list for and just use that same list. Because like you said at the beginning, every one of these are individualized, and we've got to look at that for our situation. And we can't just use what somebody else has said as their case and say, well, I'm just going to use that same checklist because I've got 8 kids and they have 2 kids. We're just going to make it work.
Yeah, and absolutely. And the things we worry about are different. Things that I have individuals that got their money invested 100% in the stock market, and they're completely okay with it. That would drive me nuts with where the market fluctuates and the way it goes up and down. And again, definitely wouldn't recommend that anyone put everything in the market or look at even cryptocurrency. I've got individuals in there that seem to be super happy. Now, don't know underneath how much they're stressing out with the drop in the market and stuff there. But it's really comes down to that personal feelings, those personal goals. And again, realize sometimes they change. I mean, I think back when I first got married, I mean, if I would have had $500 in a bank account, I was feeling good. It's like, okay, we got a reserve, we're fine. And then it became 1,000 and then 5,000 and then 10,000 and, whatever it goes to as you age, and you're going, wait a second, $500 at one time was a great thing for me. But we've got to have a plan that's going to allow us to slowly adjust to those things. That's going to give us the guidance to say, hey, what's your main risk problem? What risk do you mainly have? And how do we solve those? So you again, go play pickleball, go play tennis, go swim, go golf, go do all the things, shop, travel like Elliot's doing, whatever it may be, and enjoy those years. Don't sit there and worry about, trying to watch, the news every day just to see if the market went up or down, to see if you can go buy groceries today or not.
Yes. Yeah, I love that, Dave. And I just want to put a plug in because as always, we have our flagship webinar, which is the greatest 2 hours that you'll ever spend as you learn more about this. It's Getting Safely Through Retirement, Dave. We've got our next one that actually is coming up on Thursday. So this one's coming up at 5 p.m. Central. So I just want to encourage you, if you are around, to get signed up for this particular class, Dave, because this webinar is fantastic.
It absolutely is. And if you're going to attend Thursday, if you're married, bring your spouse. Although they're slotted as CPE classes for CPAs to get their credits, it's far more than that. It's really a life class to help you figure out what you should do for your retirement, and for us to give you some action items and what we can do to help you do that. So yeah, we're doing these night and weekend classes a little bit now just to test and see if hopefully we can get more people coming that can't during the week.
And again, you can always find those at retirementriskadvisors.com/events. And that's where you can find a list of all of the webinars we have coming up. And Dave, speaking of webinars, just because we were talking about it earlier, holy cow, we have a slew of webinars for 2023 and all the different varieties in there. Why do you continue to do webinars?
It's all about education. And it's always interesting to me because I get to a point and I think, okay, we've covered it all. We're done. Surely we can just keep these webinars getting updated and keep educating people the way they need to. And then out of the blue, something comes into my mind and it's like, wait, people need to know that. So we do have 2 brand new webinars coming out within the next 2 months. Well, we've got about 20 webinars we'll be running next year. Many of them that we've had, many of them we're updating and changing and improving just to continue to give people better knowledge, experience, and action items. But and I assume next year we'll have 3 or 4 more that'll hit my mind that I haven't even thought about yet that I'll want to put together to help people be able to understand what they need to for their retirement.
Well, Dave, thank you again for jumping on the show with us and being part of the experience. And I know it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort. And I appreciate even from podcasts to webinars, that people just are able to gather the information they need so they can at least start taking action.
Yeah. And that's all what we're here for. Glad to do what I do. I love helping people. I love seeing people's face when they get their plan and they realize that, hey, there was something better. There was an opportunity for me to be in a better position, to have more confidence in what I'm trying to accomplish. That's very rewarding to me as a person.
Dave, I have a friend watching and he said, there's no way you're in Puerto Rico. So I'm just going to turn the computer here real quick so you can see that I'm outside and there's the window.
There is the window. Yes, that is the Music Conservatory. I'll vouch for him. That is the Music Conservatory right across the street from our office. The Miramar Lagoons just behind the conservatory there, and you got condados. So.
Yep. Yep. So I'm really there. So for those that think I'm just sitting in front of the TV somewhere, it's
Yeah, I guess we need to put you out on the beach with some palm trees and some sand behind you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, again, thank you so much, Dave, and everyone else. Thank you for watching live and those on replay. We really appreciate it. Again, if you didn't get your questions, you can always go to retirementriskadvisors.com/questions, or just hit us up on our website or social media. We're very active on all of those platforms, and we'll be happy to take your questions, or even if there's something else we can help with. But don't forget all of our webinars. Don't forget to go to our events page and check out all the different CPE webinars. But also, like Dave said, come in and really get a great experience and learn how to start taking action, and bring your spouse when you come, because you'll really get the best experience. And again, thank you so much. And Dave, thanks for sticking around.
You're welcome.